Hello, everyone, and welcome into today's episode of the Irish NFL Show with me, Colum Cronin, and delighted to be welcoming back a friend of the show at this point. He's been on with me previously. He's been on with Shane Brennan, noted Ravens fan, Ronan Mullen. Ronan, how are you doing, sir?
I'm beaming, Colin. It's a fun week. I think my anxiety levels were a lot higher last week for some reason, but quietly confident going into the weekend now.
Yeah, quite quietly counted, predicting the Ravens by 10 plus points. We'll dig into that because it's been a journey. Like the last time you were on with me, we kind of talked about, I suppose, how you got into the sport and into the Ravens. But at that point, Lamar had rejected the initial offer. There was like a demand for a trade. That we were wondering if it was the last time we had seen Lamar in a Ravens jersey. I was baffled by how the Ravens were handling it. You were kind of lamenting perhaps the loss of a great QB. But all that has changed. Then you joined Shane, and things were on the up. And suffice to say, the regular season, outside of a couple of losses to divisional rivals, and then the inexplicable loss to the Colts, it couldn't have gone much better.
No, 100%. And I remember chatting to Shane off the back of the game in London, and at that point the Ravens were 3-2, so it wasn't as if they were streaking away to this unassailable start to the season. It was very much a juncture for them to see, like you're going into either 500 or you're putting a bit of a winning streak together there. So they've kind of gone from strength to strength thereafter, and barring those hiccups that you've alluded to, the Colts one, the glaring pass interference notwithstanding and all that kind of stuff. But they yeah, I think like we were alluding to it back then, that there doesn't seem to be any tenable weakness in the team, and that's kind of been borne out. They're kind of very good on all phases, and it's the offense that was always kind of maligned. Whereas, like, if Lamar Jackson didn't turn up in so far as literally carry the offense on his own, that there wasn't much beyond that. And you've seen that it is more layered these days. The running game is multifaceted, and then also the passing game has come on leaps and bounds. And it's kind of been, I think that more than anything is highlighted by the fact that Mark Andrews, who's been his number one pass target since he came into the league, really has gone out, and the Ravens haven't really skipped a beat, and Isaiah Likely stepped into the breach very comfortably. So it's looking very rosy at the moment. And the only thing that was kind of creeping into the back of my mind last week was that history that kind of has gone somewhat against them, and Lamar's perceived shortcomings in the postseason. But that was all put to bed very comfortably in the second half last week. So yeah, I'm confident at the moment.
Yeah, I suppose, was there a moment in the season? Because as I said, you talked to Shane and but was there a moment where you realized, oh, this could be different? Because you shared the memes on Twitter for people who haven't seen them about Scrubs, and essentially, why is my team treating me like this when I do nothing but love them? And all of a sudden, you're now sharing memes of the doctors dancing. But was there a particular moment this season where you went, "Oh, this might be different from"? And I know you had the nerves coming into the playoff game, but was there, or has it been, even though they were dominant, even though they beat the Niners, and kind of had Purdy benched, as much as Niners fans might not want to say that, but what I'm wondering, I suppose, with all that going on, was there still the Ravens fan inside of you going, "Oh no, they're going to find a way to mess this up"?
No, I'd be lying if I said that wasn't the case. It's kind of innate at this point, but I suppose the little streak, and it's been crystallizing in some of the talk shows and stuff over the last few weeks. Like, the Ravens' record against those other winning teams is phenomenal, and that little run they put together where they put a beat down on the Seahawks, who I think were second seeds in the NFC at the time. The Lions as well, who were being talked up in a big way when they came to Baltimore, and they blew them out as well. And then it all kind of crescendoed with that 49ers game on Christmas Day, where I was pretending to hold meaningful conversations with family and friends when really I was just thinking about this game at 1:15 in the morning. But that was going into that game, for example, I was kind of thinking, I want them to run the 49ers hard in this game, run it close and come away with a commendable defeat, most likely. And then it obviously was not. It was like the highlight of the season so far. So I think those performances against top opponents probably made this feel a lot more concrete. And that was capped on New Year's Eve when they destroyed the Dolphins as well. So that kind of copper fastened the number 1 seed and that kind of thing. So, there's the Ravens have been here before. Obviously, I think they're the first team to reach AFC Championship games in each of the decades this century. So like there's an air of consistency there, but it's obviously the first time this Ravens franchise has hosted the AFC Championship game. So that brings with it its own sense of gravitas. And I just hope, above all, I hope they show up on Sunday. And if they do, I think they'll win. The only thing that they can only beat themselves, in my opinion, at this stage, because they're just a more complete team in every facet, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, no, well, I mean, certainly from looking at the Ravens, it seems the difference for me is that they have previously the Ravens had like one thing almost on offense or defense that they did really well. And if you manage to stop that, they struggle to find answers. All of a sudden that, is no longer the case. And perhaps in, Mike Macdonald, we are seeing a defensive coordinator, the next guy who's everyone is potentially going to base the schemes off of, because we had the Fangio kind of era, the too high shell, and the NFL, it's always there's it's constantly evolving. There was a response to the response, but teams have kind of figured out how to play the Fangio system. All of a sudden, McDonald comes in. It's much more about disguises. Linebackers, middle linebackers are suddenly back in vogue. Roquan has unlocked Patrick Queen. I mean, they made CJ Stroud, who is a very good, and I know he's only a rookie, but my goodness, his diagnosis throughout the season was so good. But they had him in hell the other day. As a Ravens fan, how fun has the defense been to watch? And this is I suppose a piece where the Harbaugh brothers kind of work together. They like to sometimes make jokes at each other's expense, but McDonald went on loan essentially to Michigan before coming back to the Ravens to take over as DC. But all the talk is him as the Shanahan system slayer, and that he's very likely to go elsewhere. So I suppose, A, about the defense this year, and B, do you think he will go, and how much of it do you think any of that depend on this week's or this weekend's game, Ronan?
Yeah, on the last point, I suppose, you saw how highly touted Dan Quinn was going into that Cowboys game against the Packers, and then his candidacy for head coaching took a bit of a hit on that day. So short of something like that, I think he's a shoo-in for a head coaching job in the next couple of seasons. But more broadly on the defense, it has been the heartbeat and ethos of the franchise since its inception, really. And from the outside looking in, the perception, I presume, of the Ravens has been, they're a hard-nosed team. They'll keep it close defensively and make the plays at the right times on offense, whereas they are still elite defensively, but they've got that other string to their bow now on the offensive side. And I know more so than any sport, NFL has been streets ahead with analytics and stats-driven concepts and decisions. But I was on my time and off the ball. It's something I would always have maintained, which is somewhat of an old school thing. But the personalities are still important, and intangibles. You hear that word thrown around a lot, and I think having the right character there is also key. And Roquan Smith has just like a one-man revolution there, really, in terms of being that rising tide that lifted all boats. And you took the words out of my mouth there with the Patrick Queen thing, because if you look back to the last time the Ravens and the Chiefs played in Baltimore, and the Ravens eked it out with, let's just say, interesting cast of characters. I don't know how Lamar got the job done that day, but Patrick Queen was like at fault for a good few of the Chiefs' big plays on offense, and there was a sense when he was drafted that he was a bit of a bust. And now as he comes into contract years and potential big money. He's been brilliant this year, and I put that down to Smith and that sort of tandem they've put together. And I suppose Mike McDonald's getting a lot of plaudits, and rightly so. But when you've got this sort of dynamic defense, which can go sideline to sideline, can attack the run game of the opposition, good in coverage, it's pretty well stacked. And then Kyle Hamilton, it feels like even though Ozzie Newsome has stepped into the back benches there, that was a very Ozzie Newsome pick that Eric DaCosta made, taking Kyle Hamilton, which wasn't necessarily a position of need, but he was the best available player. And I'd say the rest of the league were looking around thinking, I can't believe we let Kyle Hamilton fall to the Ravens, because he's a very Ravens player. So, it's very exciting. And like I feel like Todd Monken's getting a lot of credit as well. And it's very easy to be in the flush of things and looking at it through purple tinted glasses, and this is all amazing. But I feel like in some ways Wink Martindale and Greg Roman get unfairly maligned, because they did put together very impressive seasons themselves. Like, not enough to get the Ravens to win a Super Bowl, but Lamar Jackson won an MVP with that Greg Roman run offense. Wink Martindale, it was a bit one-dimensional, the defense. I just feel like they were already in a good place once they got the personnel sorted. They have upgraded at the coordinator positions, and I think that's why they're ready to make a run at this point.
Yeah, no, I think the baseline was good, but it's a bit like, I saw it with the Broncos and John Fox. John Fox was successful as a head coach, but the Broncos just kept it, ultimately 4 AFC West titles in a row, but he couldn't get it done in the playoffs, and they moved on. And I think the Ravens need to be commended for kind of not letting good be the enemy of great, and their willingness to make the changes. And you're talking about personnel and the intangibles. I might point to Marcus Peters no longer being on the roster. It's funny, whenever it's a bit like Ibrahimovic, very talented, but whenever he leaves, the team suddenly manages to get over the hump, whether that's the Rams, the Chiefs, and now the Ravens. So who knows? Maybe we'll see how it plays out. I suppose you are kind of confident going into this weekend, and you can get that right. You've got the presumptive league MVP, who is when the team have kind of finally put a plan in place and given him some wide receivers. Funnily enough, the guy looks incredible. And you're obviously, we've talked a little bit about the defense. From your perspective, right? You're talking about they can only beat themselves. But is there any concern that you are facing Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, or is the Chiefs' receiving situation such that there's just, it would just be complacency or the bounce of a ball that could cost this Ravens team a place in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I suppose there are other elements like officiating and stuff, which are kind of out of the Ravens' control. So you have to play better than the ref's ref kind of thing. I'm not dismissing the Chiefs as like, to be the man, you got to beat the man, all that kind of stuff. And I think the Chiefs will turn up. That's almost a guarantee. And you can kind of mark it up that they're going to score a couple of touchdowns and make some explosive plays. But I just feel like the Ravens, they'll still play to their level. And I think their level is good enough to ultimately win. And I can't see stage fright on this occasion. It's like a cautionary tale that we've seen before with favored teams. But I just think the personalities there will guard against that. I suppose the one thing on offense, we've seen the passing game open up, and like when necessary, they're very expansive, but there isn't a receiver, barring Odell Beckham, who's kind of been there and done it. Like, he's obviously was on course for Super Bowl MVP were it not for that injury. But he has been used somewhat sparingly. And I just feel like we will potentially need a big game from him in one of the next 2 outings to get the job done here. Because like when it's all said and done and it comes down to crunch time, who's going to be that target? It would have been Mark Andrews in the past. It's kind of touch and go whether he'll play this week. So maybe, I suppose, in that when it comes in the heel of the hunt, who are they going to go to? And Zay Flowers has been that person all year, but it's a lot to ask of a rookie. So we'll see how that goes. But the running back position as well, it would be nice to have Keaton Mitchell there, or you cast your mind back to J.K. Dobbins getting injured on the first game of the season. So they've managed to patch that up very well, and Gus Edwards is very reliable finisher of drives. But will Dalvin Cook be the difference maker? I think that was kind of a shrewd acquisition. So those kind of couple of unknowns, maybe the who's going to be the go-to receiver in the crunch, and the running game. Can they make sure that keeps motoring along?
Yeah, well, the running back, I mean, the injuries were just there's something that I think the Ravens have to factor in at this point. If you were a Ravens running back, chances are you're going to suffer an unfortunate and major injury. But they have managed it really well, and they're still a threat. Now, some of that is obviously Lamar and the threat of Lamar, but at the same time, they have done a really nice job there, especially when you consider they've rotating tackles throughout the season as well, which is a little bit unusual. On the other side of the in terms of the NFC, do you think, I mean, we've established you're confident that the Ravens are going to the Super Bowl. Is it a rematch against the 49ers, and or could the Lions spring a surprise?
Yeah, I was hoping the Packers were going to get the job done, because the Ravens have obviously, I've seen actually some funny interactions on Twitter of Lions and 49ers fans arguing about who had the better blowout loss to the Ravens. So we've already dealt with them both very comfortably, and I was kind of hoping we wouldn't have to do it again, because the adage of beating the same team twice, and especially in critical games. So it is what it is. It's going to be one of those teams. I think the 49ers might have got their blip out of the system last week, and I think they might deal with this in somewhat more comfortable fashion. The Deebo Samuel thing is obviously a bit of a loss. It's been well covered that Brock Purdy's not exactly a highlight reel of a quarterback. He is kind of reliant on the system, and the system is reliant on the players. And the more you start losing those key components, the more stretched it might become. So I think the 49ers will get there, and I think it'll be, if that is the Super Bowl, 49ers Ravens, it'll be a lot closer than the game on Christmas Day. I feel that's the kind of game that might come down to the last drive. And equally, I think the Lions have been America's team probably at this stage. I think most neutrals are probably rooting on them to get there, and it's not beyond the realms that they could put together a winning situation on Sunday. Like, I think the weather looks like it's going to be good, and I know it played a big factor last week, the bad conditions. So it's a dry ball for Jared Goff as well, and he tends to play well in those conditions. So I think the 49ers and the Ravens will both win well out of the spread. I think they'll both win comfortably, and I think on paper they probably are the two best teams this year, and it's probably the Super Bowl that the NFL, Taylor Swift notwithstanding, I think that's probably the Super Bowl that the NFL want.
I mean, I think the Lions are the story, right? Like everybody, I mean, that the romantic story would be, but I think, yeah, if you're looking at probably the two best rosters, and certainly the two teams with the best starters, I think ultimately you are talking about the Ravens and the 49ers, and it would be fascinating to see McDonald kind of try and scheme it up again, and how that would go. Ronan, I want to thank you for taking the time to chat to me. I think you're probably pleased as a fan on this side of the Atlantic that it's the earlier game on Sunday night as well. I've yet to, I think, decide, but I just that defense, the way they're able to shut teams down. I do think that is probably the model that more teams are going to go to, that disguised look. And I do think Roquan, as I said, I saw it again with the Broncos with DeMarcus Ware coming in, and he unlocked Von Miller. Now there's lots of other stuff off the field now with Von, but Von DeMarcus Ware coming in, and Von with DeMarcus Ware was just a different player. And I think you're seeing the same with Patrick Queen. I think the if it is the Ravens against the 49ers, I think rather than talk Purdy against Lamar, because I don't think there's much of a conversation there, I think looking at those linebackers, I think Greenlaw and Warner against Roquan and Patrick Queen should be quite the battle. And maybe Shane might talk to you in relation to that one. But for now, thank you very much for taking the time to chat to me today.
No, thanks a million, Colum.